Hello, today we'll do the poem Fidelity by William Wordsworth. So, this poem was there and is there in the second semester of Mysore University BSc Animation, Game Designing, Interior Designing, and Fashion Designing courses. So, this poem is by the High Priest of Nature, William Wordsworth. High priest means that he was a worshipper of nature, and in the poem, the poet says, a barking sound the shepherd hears, a cry as of a dog or fox. So there is a shepherd, one who looks after the sheep. When the sheep got taken out to graze in the pasture, and the shepherd hears a barking sound, and this barking sound is like that of a dog or a fox. He halts and searches with his eyes among the scattered rocks. So the shepherd, when he hears the barking sound of this animal, he halts, he stops, and he looks around to see where the sound is coming from. And he searches with his eyes among the rocks which are scattered on the sides of the on the ground, and now at a distance can discern a stirring in a break of fern. So, as he's searching with his eyes, as he's looking around to see where the noise is coming from, the barking noise is coming from, he sees at a distance. In the distance, he can discern or he can see a stirring in a break of fern. So he can see some bushes, some fern bushes moving, and instantly a dog is seen glancing through that covert tree, and soon he sees a dog which is looking around through that covert green, through that secret green bush in the distance. The dog is not of mountain breed, his motions too are wild and shy. So the shepherd can see that the dog is not a wild dog, it is not a mountain breed of dog, because its motions, the way it moves, are wild movements and they are shy movements, as though it is a domestic animal, domesticated dog, which has been out in the uh, wild for too long. So the movements of the dog are wild and shy, with something, as a shepherd thinks, unusual in its cry. So the dog is barking, is whining, is whimpering, and the shepherd thinks there's something unusual in its barking and its whining and its whimpering. Nor is there anyone in sight, all round in hollow or on height. And as the shepherd continues to look around, he sees that there's no one in sight, all around that place, whether it's in an indentation, whether it's in the hollow of the earth, or on the height of a nearby hill. No shout, no whistle strikes his ear. So there's no one who shouts for the dog, nor is there anyone who whistles for the dog, and it's completely silent. So the shepherd thinks, what is the creature doing there? So what is this dog doing out in that lonely, uh, cold, and uh, gloomy place? It was a cove, a huge recess that keeps till June, December snow, a lofty precipice in front, a silent town below. So it was a cove. A cove is like a cave. It's a huge recess. It is a huge indentation in the side. And in this cave, the snows of December are kept till June. That is, the sunlight doesn't enter that place. It is a dark, cold and lonely place. And this snow is kept till June, till summer. The snow which falls in December remains as it is, remains frozen. And in front of that cove, in front of that cave, there was a lofty precipice. A precipice is a cliff, a very high cliff, and at the bottom of that cliff, there was a silent tarn. A tarn is a lake. So, for far in the bosom of Helvellyn, remote from public road or dwelling, pathway or cultivated field, from trace of human foot or hand. So that cave where the dog is whimpering for someone or something, that cave is in the bosom, it's in the middle of Helvellyn Mountain. Helvellyn Mountain was its mountain in England. So this cave, there was no public road, nobody went there, and there was no dwelling, there was no farmhouse, nobody lived there, nobody went there. There was no pathway or cultivated land. There was no farm, and it's remote from trace of human foot or hand. So it's a totally desolate, empty, gloomy, cold, and lonely place. There sometimes doth the leaping fish send through the tarn a lonely cheer. So in the lake below, in the silent lake below, once or twice a fish jumps out, leaps out of the water. It jumps out of the water and then dives back into the water. So this is the only cheering sight in that tarn, in that lake. So even the waters of the lake, they're grey colored, and the wind and the clouds form a very somber atmosphere in that place, on the bosom, in the middle of Helvellyn Mountain. The crags repeat the raven's croak in symphony austere. So the raven, a bird which is like a crow, croaks in that place. Just as the crow caws, the raven croaks. And the croaks of the raven are echoed, they're repeated through the stones, sharp stones on the side of Helvellyn Mountain, through the crags of Helvellyn Mountain. And these echoes of the raven's croak are music which is austere or serious. Thither the rainbow comes, the cloud, and mist that spread the flying shroud. So there, on nearly 3/4 up the way of Helvellyn, up on Helvellyn Mountain, the rainbow comes, and the cloud also comes, and there are mists that spread the flying shroud. A shroud is a sheet which is placed on a dead body. So this place has a deathly look to it, and sunbeams in the sounding blast that if it could would hurry past, but that enormous barrier binds it fast. And sunbeams also fall sometimes on that place, and the sounding blast, the whistling, the roaring wind, the blast of the roaring wind also is also heard there. The wind, if it could, would go straight on ahead, it would hurry past, but the enormous barrier of Helvellyn stops it in its tracks. It binds the wind fast. Now free from boding thoughts, while the shepherd stood. So the shepherd in this place had some boding thoughts. He has some, he's dreading something. He has boding thoughts. He dreads something, but he doesn't know what it is that causes that feeling of fear and apprehensiveness in him. He stands there, then makes his way toward the dog over rocks and stones as quickly as he may. So he goes towards the dog, which is waiting for him. He walks over rocks and stones as quickly as he can. Now far had gone before he found a human skeleton on the ground. He had not gone far when he found a decomposed body not even a body. There was no flesh. It was just a skeleton on the ground. And he sees that a person has died there. And the appalled discoverer with a sigh looks round to learn the history. So the horrified discoverer, the horrified shepherd who's discovered the skeleton, sighs. He gives out a soft expulsion of breath because he's feeling sad, and he looks around to see how that skeleton, how that person had died there. From those abrupt and perilous rocks, the man had fallen. So those stones, the perilous, the dangerous, and abrupt, those stones which rise in an almost a vertical gradient, from that cliff, the man had fallen, and that place was a place of fear. It was a scary and fearful place. At length, upon the shepherd's mind, it breaks, and all is clear. So, as the shepherd is thinking about who this person was, and how he came to be there, suddenly he remembers, and all is clear. He instantly recalled the name. He, he remembers the name of that traveler and who he was, who that traveler was, and whence he came, and where that traveler came from. Remember too the very day on which the traveler passed this way. So the shepherd himself had met that traveler, and he remembers the very day the traveler had passed this way. But hear a wonder, for whose sake this lamentable tale I tell. Now the poet says he, he is telling this tale for the sake, for someone or something's sake. And this tale that he's going to tell is full of wonder. A lasting monument of words, this wonder merits well. So this poem, which was written almost 300, 400 years ago, is still being read today. So this poem is a lasting monument. The words of the poem are lasting monuments. And the poet says, whatever he's going to tell next merits or deserves well this lasting monument of words. The dog, which still was hovering nigh, repeating the same timid cry, this dog had been, through 3 months' space, a dweller in that savage place. So the dog, which was still waiting near the skeleton, and it was repeating the same timid cry, the dog had been there for 3 months. The traveler had passed through that place 3 months ago. The shepherd had met him. The traveler had fallen from the cliff, and the dog, his pet, had waited, had hovered. It had gone round and round the place where its master had fallen for 3 months, and it had dwelt or lived in that savage place. Yes, proof was plain that since the day when this ill-fated traveler died, the dog had watched about the spot. So the dog is so loyal, it had watched about the spot where the ill-fated traveler had fallen to his death, and it was plain that it had watched since the day the traveler had fallen, or it had moved, it had gone round and round the place, or it sat by its deceased or dead master's side. How nourished here through such long time, he knows who gave that love sublime. So how did it, what did it eat? How was it nourished through the space of 3 months? What did it have? How did it survive? He knows, God knows, who gave that love sublime. So God Himself has given that uh, fine feeling of loyal love of the dog to its master. So only God knows how the dog had survived for 3 months and gave that strength of feeling great above all human estimate. So humans cannot estimate or measure the depth or the strength of loyalty and devotion that the dog has. It is a great depth of devotion that this animal possesses. It possesses the the quality of fidelity, that is, of being loyal and faithful to its master. So, to commemorate the fidelity of the dog, the poet has written this poem. Okay, so as I said, this poem is included in many anthologies, including those for BSc of